What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Lexi J Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lexi Johnson. Unfortunately, I'm riding solo. I do not have my better half this week. As most of you guys are probably aware, if you've listened to, any of the previous episodes or just follow along on Instagram, we're kind of in a weird interim phase here. So normally, if you're brand new here, my husband is my co-host, and I really enjoy that. It's been over a year since I have done a solo podcast. The Lexi J Wellness Podcast started as a solo project, I believe in 2021, January. And I did them all monologue style like this. So I am no stranger to talking to myself. I do that pretty regular, really. However, throughout that, process in the first year of doing the podcast, I had some guests on, and I loved interacting and having that engagement and just conversation. And my favorite guest was always Brett. Probably why I married the guy. I've never gotten tired of him. So that has, we started that in January of 23, doing it together, kind of rebranded the podcast as a joint venture. And that's been something that we have loved to do. We actually haven't missed an episode, and we're just a few weeks away from 2024. And like I'd mentioned, we're in this interim period where our new home is not quite ready yet. We sold our other home, and Brett has to work in office. I work remotely. So, we are like splitting time. He's living with his sister during the week, and then I'm down at the lake with the dogs throughout the week. So, Delta, speak of the devil, our chocolate lab is trying to get up on the couch if you're watching the YouTube version. If you're my mother-in-law, this didn't happen. Delta, get down. So anyway, it's been over a week because I was out of town since Brett and I have seen each other, and unfortunately, we are not tech savvy enough to figure out the whole recording and keeping good audio quality via Zoom. So you have the Lexi solo show this week, and hopefully we'll get Brett back next week. But like I said, this is not my first rodeo in talking to myself. I do it pretty frequently, with or without a camera, with or without a microphone. So I just wanted to chat with you guys because one, we wanted to keep the streak alive, but two, sometimes I have some things on my heart and on my head or on my mind, I should say, that I feel like I cannot be the only one thinking about. And I know that this is something that I've recently talked about with several people, friends, family members, because it's something that comes up and it's applicable to so many different phases of life, and it's making the unpopular decision. So I think that if you're a parent, you're probably hearing unpopular decision and you're like, that's the name of my everyday existence as a parent, especially if you're a parent of like a preteen or a teenager. Gosh, looking back, I have and I was a good kid, like a good teenager, but I have so much empathy for parents because you just can't get it right. They're embarrassed by kids are embarrassed by everything, or they're just unhappy with so many things. And my parents did the absolute best job ever, and kids just don't appreciate it. So I'm sure making the unpopular decision as a parent hits home because it probably feels really frequently. And those unpopular decision points come pretty frequently, but in varying sizes. So whether it's you going through a grocery line and your kid is begging for candy that's, at the end cap and you have to tell them no, or it's you making a big decision point with your social group or your professional life or your schooling or any number of things, your relationships. Like I have talked about this on the podcast several times, but when I was going through college, I would go out and I would drink and I would party a lot. And that's not to say that, I regret that period of time, but it's such a stark contrast to my existence right now and my identity that it feels like a different life. And in order to close that chapter and kind of move on to the next stage of life, which by the way, I'm so much happier and more fulfilled and healthier for sure in the stage of life and the existence I have now. But I kind of had to close that chapter, and I had to make a lot of unpopular decisions. I had to let a lot of people down. And that sucks, honestly. Like there's no sugarcoating it because it's just that. When you make unpopular decisions, they're not going to be welcomed with open arms. And I had actually read a book recently that it hit home so hard. And I think that, again, this can be applied to so many different things, but it talks about when you make those decision points and you have those pivotal moments where you are making a change and you're maybe stepping off the path and, going into a different direction than your peer group or the people that you have just constantly surrounded yourself with, there's going to be some pushback. There's going to be natural tension there just because people want to know what to expect from you. And if you presented consistently in one way, so, for forever so long, then they have a pretty good idea about what they can get from you, and they expect that to come. So when there's any sort of change, naturally, there's going to be a pushback, and we kind of have to understand that. Like, change is a little bit of a question mark for a lot of us, and it's not typically a welcome thing. Just because, like I said, everybody wants to be comfortable. Everybody wants to know what to expect. However, with that pushback, the people that are going to continue, pushing against that, giving you friction and not promoting the growth or the elevation, whatever that decision point is, assuming that you're moving in a direction where, you're furthering your life, you're bettering your quality of life, and you're, improving your situation. If the people that are continuing to push back are continuing to do so, despite you explaining, this is what I want most, this is going to help promote the, the overall goal here. And if they're continuing to do that, then they're just going to do that because they feel entitled to that version of you. And that version of you no longer serves you. So you have to remember that no one is going to come take care of you. No one is going to come make these hard decisions for you, and it's up to you to make those tough calls. However, there are going to be people, and I think this is important to remember, because when you're at those points, it feels really, really lonely, and it feels upsetting, because the people that you thought were your friends, the people that you thought you could lean on, sometimes when they start pushing back, it feels like you're super isolated, and I know that sucks. However, the people that are going to promote your goals, going to promote your growth, the people that are going to support you long term, they're excited to see you elevate, because they know that they're going to come along with you. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about making sure that you're making the tough choices for the people that are, going to be there for the long run, the people that want the best for you and that you want the best for them. Are you in your corner, or are you in their corner, and are they in yours? Because if you're listening to the side chatter from the people that, one, you wouldn't seek advice from, or two, haven't been where you're wanting to go, then you're just listening to all that background noise, and it's not serving you at all. It's creating a lot of frustration for you. And I know that we had talked about this on the podcast at one point. There's this term called rate buster, and I have to hit the T really hard, because when I had first said rate buster, Brett thought I said something else. So this term called rate buster it originated from like factory workers. So like in the industrial period, factory workers on the assembly line would have an expected rate of production, hourly. And then someone would go in and they would just outperform everyone. And they would be a rate buster, and it would put a stark contrast between the people that were just showing up, checking boxes and fulfilling the status quo, and then the people that were coming to produce and to do something. They were on a mission, and it put a really very obvious gap between those people that were just muddling along, that weren't seeking to elevate, and the people that were there for a reason. They were there to do something. We always talk about this in Lexi J Wellness. We say, are you here just for something to do, or are you here to do something? And there's a stark difference in those two things. And I think that, in showing up and acting with intent, then you're here to do something. Whereas if you're just showing up and you're checking boxes and you're saying, well, I'm here, I'm doing what you asked, then you're just doing something. And I know that those two things sound very similar, but there's a stark contrast. But I wanted to come back to just that decision point, because, whether it's called a rate buster, or you're talking about the social circle being, creating that friction there, whatever you call it, that period of isolation. I've also heard it called the tall poppy syndrome. When in a poppy field, when one of the poppies grows a lot taller, it starts to put a shadow on the nearby poppies, and it'll kill that because it doesn't get sunlight. So they cut it down. And I don't know if there's much truth to this, or if it's just a fable, but the story and kind of moral of it rings true still. So when that poppy would grow taller than the rest of the poppies, they would cut it down. That way it wouldn't outshine the surrounding ones. And when you start to separate yourself from that group that you were once part of and once very embedded in, you're part of the in group. And then once you start to stray and make those decisions that you don't necessarily want to live in that way, or you don't want to do those things anymore, it shines a really stark contrast. Because one, like I said, nobody's going to welcome that change with open arms. But two, it starts to shine a lack sometimes in those people that you're moving from, because they feel entitled to that person that you were, and that identity the identity that you held, kind of for them and their expectation. So I think that it's important when you come down to making that pivotal decision, because it's never fun. It's not fun to make the unpopular decision. It's not fun to make the hard choice and have pushback. Everybody wants to be liked, and everybody wants to, feel like they're doing right by the most people. But if you're doing right by the people that are just wanting you to stay where you are and that are wanting the status quo, then you're not serving the best version of you. You're not showing up for the people that are counting on you to perform to your potential. And then you're doing everyone a disservice. So it comes down to it, to asking yourself, is this what I want most? Or is this what I'm being pressured into right now? And I know that peer pressure is hard. And I know that the background noise and the side chatter is loud. But you have to remember, are those people that are talking, are they the ones that you would seek advice from? Are they the ones that you would look to for guidance? Are they in a position that you really want to be in? And you could, look to them to use as a map and a guiding point to elevate and to move in the direction that you want. Because we have such a finite amount of time on this earth. And when it comes to those unpopular decisions, whether they be in relationships, whether they be in professional life, whether they be in, your social circles, you have a very finite amount of time on this world, and a very finite amount of time in this life. And if you're bending to every want and desire of the people around you, and you're not standing strong in your convictions, then you're going to go to bed at night thinking that you're living for someone else and you're living in someone else's life. You're not going to feel fulfilled at all. And you're also going to, like I mentioned earlier, you're doing a disservice to the people that are counting on you. And you have an obligation to show up, not just for the people around you, but for the best version of you. And there's a best version of you out there, years from now, that is so grateful that you're going through this uncomfortable period right now and you're making the hard calls, because the people that make the popular decisions are rarely remembered, but the people that make the hard choices are called leaders. And, with that, I think that I'll end it. I think that's good. The people that make the popular decisions are hardly remembered for those popular decisions. They may be, the most fun and have the best story on Friday or Saturday nights in a small town bar. But the people that make the hard choices, the people that make those tough calls, while they're unpopular in the moment, they're going to be remembered because they're going to serve the greater good. And if you're in a position, as a leader, if it's a leader of a family, if it's a leader of a business, if it's a leader of a team, you have to remember that the people surrounding you, the people that are going to be in your corner when you're celebrating and you're at that point where you want to be, and you've accomplished and impacted the people that you want to, or accomplished the things that you want to, and impacted the people in the manner that you want to, they're going to be grateful that you made those tough choices. And they're going to be grateful that you showed up and stood firm in your convictions. And the people that initially had that pushback, well, they're going to be moving on, and they're going to be looking to, a lesser version that they feel entitled to. But that version of you no longer exists. Just like that party version of me is hard to remember. There were people at one point that felt very entitled to, wild, crazy, drinking all the time Lexi. And although it sucks to move on and to have that not so great period of time where they felt like I was moving on and, moving beyond them, it was just a closing of a chapter. No hard feelings. So I hope that whatever you guys are going through, you're never alone in it, and that you're standing strong and making the tough calls, because I promise you're going to go to bed and you're going to feel proud that you did, whether it's easy or not, and it rarely is. But typically the things that are not easy in the moment are the most rewarding and satisfying long term. So I'm really looking forward to getting my partner in crime back next week. Hopefully Brett's back so we could record another episode. But until next Wednesday, if you guys have any topics or suggestions, any questions you want us to touch on, or I don't know, I'm interested to hear your feedback in the solo episode. Like I said, I'm a little rusty. It's been over a year since I've done one, but you can always email your feedback to Lexi that's my email, pod@lexijwellness.com. You can email feedback or topic suggestions. I'm looking forward to hearing it, but I hope you guys have a phenomenal Wednesday. I'll talk to you later.